Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. If I sound perhaps a little down or lower energy than usual, I was literally just marathoning Dead Demons DDDD Destruction minutes before the podcast, which I would not recommend anybody do at least that many episodes in a row. But we'll talk more about that later. On another note, I am officially starting vacation tomorrow. So do you think there's any hope that we will be able to finish this podcast within 2 hours and I can start editing and get everything done tonight?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Yes, I agree. But that is because we have so many great topics to talk about on this episode. And before we get into that, we'll introduce everybody. I'm Jel, joined by Iro.
I'm still here. I'm not dead yet.
Still with us. Iro, I have to say, I am impressed with how quickly you've been absorbed into the world of Monster Hunter, just as an outside observer.
Yeah, that sure happened. Turns out
it seems like you're in real deep, real fast.
Having a AAA repetitive task to do while you're depressed means you do it a lot.
See, I've espoused this conspiracy already, but I'm sure that, like, the moment I got into From Software games, you decided to go even further down the sicko hole. So now, like, I can't partake in these conversations once again.
Well,
honestly.
It just means you have to get into Monster Hunter now, Zig.
Oh boy, maybe that'll be another cold day in hell.
Yeah, well, that's what we thought with the From games, right?
A cold day, like in Monster Hunter World Iceborne.
TM released in 20 whatever.
20 whatever, yeah.
We're also joined by G.
I guess in the interest of Jel's vacation, I won't give my Alien Romulus review here.
Oh yeah, I thought you might bring up the random interview with Yoshiki Tanaka on the Honkai Star Rail YouTube page that came up out of.
Oh, we could talk about that one too. I mean.
I feel like we should at least
science fiction.
I feel like we should at least mention it, especially. Yeah. I've noticed our mentioning of the the legendary 1980s OVA, Legend of the Galactic Heroes. I feel like our references to that have dropped in the past.
Look, man, we just haven't had a new season of DNT in a while, so
I mean, look. I agree that we have dropped to like a dozen references an episode, so like.
No, we really haven't been mentioning it lately, but yes, that was very weird though. That they just, I think the people at, MiHoYo just have billions of dollars now, and they're a bunch of nerds and are just doing whatever the hell they want. So yeah, let's just do an interview with Yoshiki Tanaka that has nothing to do with any of our games.
Hey man, if I were Yoshiki Tanaka, I'd take the money. Quite frankly,
yeah. And it was very well produced. They bring in like a small orchestra at the end.
An orchestra at the end? Yeah,
it's like a very well produced. They spent a lot of money on this.
They're probably playing Honkai music and not.
I couldn't even recognize.
They were playing
Galactic Heroes music.
It's a classical music piece that I don't remember if they played it in Legend of Galactic Heroes, but they definitely play it in Honkai Star Rail. Like
they played a lot of classical music in Legend of Galactic Heroes.
Yeah, well, that's Kafka's whole thing in Honkai Star Rail. She plays.
Right, that is true.
So maybe you should have given us your thoughts on Alien Romulus. It would have been
I know, right? Like, honestly, It would have been shorter than this.
Anyway, yes, we can move on.
It's a pretty good movie.
We are also joined by Zig.
I do not have any pithy anecdote to give, so I will just say I might be done with MiHoYo games. I've been trying to get back into Genshin ahead of like the 5.0 patch, and
congratulations, Zig! You escaped.
Yeah, I'm only into like 3 horrifyingly crippling things now.
Yeah, I mean, I dropped Genshin like more than a year ago at this point. I'm all Star Rail and still hanging on to ZZZ, but that's another...
They are not beating the allegations of like not having dark-skinned characters in any of their games.
What are you talking about? Aren't you excited for White Boy Egypt?
It's so funny that like...
We've already had White Boy
They
Egypt.
put that also like they had art for the Unloaded Bladeworks thing, and they even lightened up Archer's skin.
Wait, did they? I didn't even notice that. That's...
I didn't know if they put actual official art out for that yet. But anyway, that's a whole nother can of worms we're not going to open here. Let's get to our topics. So we're going to start on a bit of a sadder note here and just have a few words for the passing of voice actress Atsuko Tanaka. Sort of somewhat unexpected. She was still quite young, so but she's most famous for like being like the Major in Ghost of the Shell, right?
Yeah, I would say I think at least for our generation of anime fan, Atsuko Tanaka would probably be most known for her role as Motoko Kusanagi in Ghost in the Shell. She's reprised the role since literally the original Oshi film, and probably cast her in Fate Stay Night. Medea, I guess.
Yep, that's where I know her from, and among many other things, she was Lisa in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Yep.
Yeah,
an extremely prolific actress, it must be said.
Yeah. Like in many ways,
she was the
kind
narrator in Thunderbolt Fantasy.
She was. Oh man, I didn't even know that one. Jeez, that is sad. But yeah, just Atsuko Tanaka could kind of be considered to be like kind of one of the foremost of her field, right? Like I would say she is kind of. I mean, not the OG, but like she is definitely like one of the most notable. Like, oh, you need like a really hard ass lady,
right? You need an old or hot or adult,
both.
Woman, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she played Bayonetta in the Japanese, version, so like very much that style of character, and. 61 of an undisclosed illness, so very very young, definitely taken from us too soon. So just wanted to acknowledge the like really impressive body of work she's had.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's always tough to hear. It's not that it's not any less sad when we lose some of the older people in the industry, but like. It's hits harder too when they're so young. So yeah,
I mean, she was still working, right? Like that's the thing.
I mean, she was still in pretty high profile roles. Like,
yeah, I mean, she played Flame in Frieren recently. Yeah,
right.
So like,
really recent stuff. So yeah, really sad news. Well, there's no good way to transition out of that.
Well, speaking of sad news, is maybe the handling of Girls Band Cry's English release.
Yeah, we can on a much lighter note here. I opened up last episode talking about this surprise announcement that there would be an official English language release of last season's best show, Girls Band Cry.
And to be clear, when you mentioned that on the last podcast, the form of that release was not yet known.
Yes,
right?
There were no details other than they gave a date. They gave a release date and said it'll be coming out. They gave no details on how. We kind of joked that it would be like on some obscure, streaming service or whatever. It's much worse.
They put it on Tubi or something.
So first of all, it's not streaming. You have to purchase it digitally, like it's like it's like iTunes 2007, right?
Yeah.
Like
this shit is so cracked out, man. I can't believe it.
Especially in anime, which is one of the few markets left where people will buy discs. Like like personally, and I know plenty of people, like I ain't gonna buy anything digitally. If I'm gonna spend money on something, I want it like in physical form.
Okay, so not only that, the places that you can purchase this, one is Amazon Prime Video. Okay, that makes sense. You can also purchase it Fandango at Home.
I was not even aware this was a thing.
Do you guys remember Fandango, the company that you can buy movie tickets online from?
Right.
Yeah,
Because I don't live in the United States.
Right. I've used them a couple times to get tickets for like
So,
special events.
I did not
Yeah.
know they
Yeah.
have a digital download store for you to buy movies from.
That's so funny.
I bet that's going to be great for long-term preservation. Yeah.
There's also Microsoft Movies. I don't know what that is. If that's part of their store or whatever.
Sure, I'll watch it on my Xbox 360.
And Hoopla, which I think is a bookstore, digital bookstore.
To be a fly on the wall for this conversation. Was it really okay? If we talk about like the descending tier list of streaming services to put an anime on, like what was like Hulu not answering the phone?
I think my guess is that they didn't license it in the first place because A, they didn't think it was gonna be that popular, and B, there's probably some challenges with like the record label stuff because it's a show. And
that is also probably why it's not on iTunes, right?
Yeah, and then once they saw it getting buzz, they're like, "Oh, we should throw something together real quick," and this is the fastest deals that they could possibly pull together, is what I'm thinking.
Selling individual episodes, like not streaming it, like I don't know, it's
man.
baffling. I mean,
like watching the thing, I'm not Zammed on your PlayStation 3. Like,
maybe it's a cheaper license. I don't know, but it's just it was just hilarious, and
for me, like the thing that always frustrates me about this type of like situation is like it very much reminds me of like whenever like a Japanese company will be like, well, we're gonna throw this thing literally out into the cold, and if it doesn't meet our insanely unrealistic financial expectations, we'll just never do it again. Right?
Yeah, there's some real 2005 energy to this.
Like this is Capcom putting out like a port of Darkstalkers and then saying we won't make Darkstalkers 3 unless this port sells 1 million copies. Right. This is it's like what?
So I will confess I bought it.
Okay, well, you're doing your part, Joe.
I was conflicted because on the one hand I want to support Girls Band Cry, on the other hand I don't want to support this Amazon kind of behavior.
Money. Yeah,
I did buy it on Amazon because I feel like that's the only one that I will probably be around 5 years from now.
Yeah,
right. So, the other factor I found, which I found very funny, you can buy individual episodes for $2 each, or you can buy the entire season for $10, which is like less than half the price. So it's like,
that's a deal.
I was like, it's $10, all right, whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say $10 is not an exorbitant amount of money.
If it was like $20 or $30, I wouldn't have done it. But it's like, all right, it's $10, and I watched the first episode, and predictably, the subs are very dry and lifeless. They are. I don't think they're AI. They do.
Okay, yeah, that was going to be my next question.
They do have like proper grammar and names, but like it's very like. I hate to say that the literal translation is not quite that either, but it's just
very mechanical.
There's no like life or flavor to it. It's just like very, dull. And from what I saw, at least in the first episode, they were not subbing like the signs and stuff. So like,
of course,
which was really bad in the first episode, because there's the bit, when she's
checking her phone, right?
Well, not the phone part, but she's talking
the train station.
She's talking about how her family always eats dinner together, and there's the sign. In their house.
They didn't translate the sign,
and you just don't know what that is. So like, I'm like, that's a very important part to like, so you can understand how creepy her family is, right? Like,
do they do the songs?
The songs are subbed, yeah.
Okay, that's something.
So they did do that, but yeah. Anyway.
So a very bare bones release, it sounds like.
What a hilarious and, I don't know, weirdly appropriate perhaps for this underdog show to get this bizarre release. But nevertheless, Girls Band Cry is a very good show, and you should watch it by whatever means you choose.
Yeah, for just $10 on Amazon Prime.
Or do what we did and fly to Japan to watch it.
Go fly to Japan and watch it on one of their services, or get a VPN or something. I don't know. I don't know. Does the GLORIO blog endorse piracy now? Can we just say that? I don't know. But
I mean, I feel like even
in
like
this scenario, maybe it's justified.
I feel like even big mainstream publication podcasts are like nodding and winking at this point. So
yes, well, anyway,
fly to Japan.
Yeah, it's a good show though. All right, let's talk about
a not good show.
Okay, so
you're gonna have to be way more specific.
Yeah, so Kamen Rider Gotchard ended. Right?
Yes.
As of like moments before the podcast, you guys watched the ending.
Yeah, the ending has been out for about 10 hours now.
Okay, now we only talk about this periodically, but if I recall, this was a good Kamen Rider up to a certain point.
Yes,
and then. Did they like change writers or something, and then it got bad? Or
so nobody's quite sure, but
the speculation has been.
I mean, so it seemed for the first part of this show, like Keiichi Hasegawa, who has written many things that we like, including he was Gridman, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yep. Was firmly in charge and writing the vast majority of episodes, and the show was good. It was not perfect, but there were definitely encouraging signs. And then at some point, he stopped writing episodes for a fairly significant chunk of time, and the show kind of went to shit. And since then, he's written a couple of episodes, but they have not been enough to arrest the slide. And he did not write this final episode.
I assume there's no public reason given for his.
The supposed reason is he was busy writing the summer movie, right? By all accounts, he was still involved in the meetings about the scripts.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty common for different people to write different episodes on shows, right?
Yes, of course.
It's just absolutely.
People, whoever they got, did not do a good job apparently.
Well, that's putting it mildly, yes. I mean, there's the problem is it's standard practice for all Japanese media not really to comment on production issues, and especially given this is a children's show with a very niche shadow audience.
Right.
Of course, nobody's going to hold a press conference to say we replaced our head writer, but it certainly feels like he was sidelined at least, because to be clear, Kamen Rider movies are generally big non-canon bash 'em up, crash 'em up crossovers.
Well,
They're not.
This is the one that takes place in between the two episodes or whatever, right?
Sure, but
it's following up on the plot thread that got dropped in the first half.
Yeah, but my point is that normally they are not generally the thing the head writer would focus on. The head writer would focus on the show. In Kamen Rider Gaim, for example, Uebuchi did not write the movies. He wrote the TV show for the most part, and the movies just did their own thing.
Yeah.
So the claim of I abandoned the show to work on the movies seems a little flimsy, is all I'll say. It could be true, I don't know, but all that we do know is that the show has been getting steadily worse as it has approached the end, and
the ending was pretty bad.
It was awful. This final episode was perhaps the worst episode of the entire show.
So what? How did they ruin this?
It's just a combination of this is a problem that has been true of a lot of recent Kamen Rider shows, is that they can't commit to having one villain, but not in the good way, in that there's villain infighting and there's kind of it's uncertain and unclear who will come out on top. It's just that they keep chopping and changing villains with such regularity that nobody is actually given a chance to become a consistent threat or have an actual plot. So the plot of this final episode is that the bad guy wants to turn the world into gold.
Okay.
That's all we know. We don't know why he wants to do it. We don't know why he is obsessed with gold. We don't know what he will get out of turning the world into gold.
It's just because it's an alchemy thing, and this is the alchemy-themed Kamen Rider, so he wants to do the bad alchemy. right?
Yeah.
Like that's basically all
Yeah.
there is to it.
The way he's going to turn the world into gold is by using a giant Rubik's Cube in the sky, which looks about as dumb as you'd expect. And again, like, this could be dumb in the good way, but it's not. And, like, the inside of that Rubik's Cube is not a set, it's just green screen, which is bad. It looks like the holodeck from Star Trek The Next Generation. And yeah, it's just, like, all of the plot threads that were set up in the first part of the show have just sort of petered out gradually as we've been approaching this finale. Like, the last interesting plot thread, they kill the character unceremoniously without kind of resolving her baggage at all. And then there's a fight, and, and the bad guy turns our hero into gold, and all he's, like, power-ups into gold and stuff. And our hero gets out of it because he really wants to. Like,
Okay.
that's it.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah,
like it's just like,
just
look,
goes until he breaks out, and then
Yeah,
he goes,
yeah, one of
and the villain's like, "How did you escape my gold alchemy?" And he's like, "Your alchemy must not be as good as you think it is."
He was built different.
Like,
yeah.
it's
And
nuts.
look, that
It's like spiral power or something.
yeah. I mean, Iroh made that point as we were watching, and then we agreed that worked because they spent the entire show building up that plot point.
Right.
Look, I'm not opposed to like the whole kind of like I power up through the strength of my friends and my burning justice and stuff. That is the bread and butter of the tokusatsu genre.
They don't even give you that though.
They normally at least lay the groundwork for it. Like here, there is literally no explanation other than I really, really, really wanted to beat you,
It's the last episode, so he's got to win.
Yeah, and then he like transforms the entire Earth back from being gold and blows up the bad guy and everything just because he suddenly became a master alchemist because he really, really wanted to. It's unbearably lame and just such an anticlimax. There's not. He doesn't have to work for it. He just wants it. Also, when I say things are turned to gold, what I mean is they put a bad Photoshop filter over everything. So
right.
it's not the good kind of crappy looking. It's the bad kind of crappy looking.
I have a very specific image of like the Photoshop like metallic filter on everything.
I will provide you with an extremely good image, which we might be able to use as their header for this episode. And then you may recall in previous episodes we have complained about an obnoxious crossover character who keeps popping up, and like the last 5 minutes of this show are dedicated to that guy popping up again, and it's so awful. It's incredibly bad. It's like the second rider whose girlfriend died in the previous episode gets like one sentence to resolve his plot arc, but we have to have a cameo appearance from this fucking rube who has contributed nothing to the show except to show up and shill a bunch of toys even more blatantly than normal. And it's just bad. It's awful. It's appalling. And it's really disappointing because like there was legitimately a point where we were thinking, oh, this could be like the best Kamen Rider show for like a good long time. And no, it's much worse than last year's. Like it's maybe worse than Revice. Would you say that, Pyro?
I think it's more disappointing than Revice. I don't know that it's worse than Revice on average.
Yeah, that's probably true. Like we have to give it some credit for the good first half, but like it's hard to go back to that good first half because again, that all the plot points raised just won't go anywhere, and that sort of sours it. It's deeply, deeply disappointing. Which is almost worse than it being bad, honestly.
Yeah, that's always worse because you guys were pretty high on it in the first half. I remember.
Like the first half, was genuinely good, and I think there were signs of good character writing. They planted long-term seeds which potentially had interesting or provocative payoffs. There was a good balance of kind of like the goofy shit that you want from a tokusatsu show and kind of like some actual narrative substance, and it just sort of all drained away bit by bit, you know.
Yeah.
And that's really disappointing. And that's the main thing, you know. Anyway, I'm going to write about it. Look for a piece on the blog. You know, I'll do my standard end wrap up, and on to the next one, I suppose.
Have they shown the next one yet?
Oh yes.
Yeah. I mean,
Gafu.
he shows up in a cameo at the end, as has become traditional at this point. You know,
It's snack themed.
yes.
Oh,
He eats
interesting.
gummies with his his waste mouth, and transforms into Kamen Rider.
Interesting.
I'm so.
He's like
So he takes a gummy and
he's
transforms
like
to.
he's like an alien with a mouth on his stomach instead of a belt, and so he eats the power up.
I feel like taking a gummy to power up is a very different context in 2024 than it may have a few years ago.
One of his forms is marshmallow themed, and he just gets really puffy.
And yet,
I guess I was trying to run it in my.
Might be better than
What I'm saying is this show might be about ethnic cleansing. I don't know. Like,
Jesus Christ. I was thinking in my head, I was rolling it over because I have not seen this design. I was like, which would be more upsetting? Like a Kamen Rider whose helmet had a human mouth on it, or like if it fed the snacks into another part of its body, and I guess it chose the latter.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Right.
You know, that's the thing. We never stop. There's always a new show.
I mean, Kamen Rider Gaim was fruit themed, right? So
Yes.
you know,
They had a good, but they had a good writer the whole way through on that.
Also, a not inconsiderable part of the charm of Kamen Rider Gaim was the dark, doom-toned atmosphere, and then somebody hitting someone else with a giant banana. You know, that's the good stuff. That's the stuff you want. You know. Speaking of which, I'm gonna throw in a very, very brief Super Sentai bit. Boom, still good. There was a baseball episode which was fantastic. There was an episode where they tried to attack the monster with their giant robot, but they couldn't because the monster brought up a lot of red lights, and they can't run the red lights because they're the good guys. But it's okay because they have a robot that's a fire engine, and emergency vehicles are allowed to run the red lights.
Yep.
In other words, it's the greatest show of all time.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're still having fun with that.
Yes. Sentai has been lovely because that can be as dumb and childish as possible as it wants, and that's fine because it's Super Sentai.
In the baseball episode, they're coaching children, and the monster hits them with a beam, which makes them realize how harsh the realities of life are, and they all want to give up on baseball. So the only solution is to play a baseball game where you're allowed to run the bases as much as you want. Final score is something like 139 to 138.
You can never go wrong with a baseball episode.
It was a really good one.
Unless you're Sonny Boy.
Yes.
Or
They let
Kaisen.
the remote control car run the bases.
The Jujutsu Kaisen baseball episode was good.
No, it wasn't.
Well, the Jujutsu Kaisen baseball episode was merely like kind of under par.
It wasn't bad.
They didn't use their powers
before we get started.
They didn't use their powers.
I'll do this.
I'm just gonna end that with they had the one screenshot of the panda guy, and his bio description on the underneath his name was wants to punch a zebra, and I think that justified that episode.
Right,
that is pretty good.
They never used Boogie Woogie to cheat at baseball. Like, why are we even here?
I'm just saying that doesn't go in the same conversation as the Sonny Boy baseball
monkey
episode,
baseball.
which
you're right.
might be one of the most aggravating pieces of fiction I've ever watched in my life.
Yeah, all right. Let's move on.
There was a robot battle in a giant But there was a giant robot battle in a baseball stadium, by which I mean a very dodgily constructed soundstage, and the monster hurled flaming baseballs, which were done by we took a baseball and lit it on fire and then threw it at the camera, and it looks great. Super Sentai rules.
That's pretty good. All right. At least there's some fun to be had in the Toku world currently.
Yep.
All right. One more thing. Excuse me, we can mention. You guys are is Iro, you and Zig both still watching Elusive Samurai? Or
I guess I'm still here. I guess I'm not dead yet.
Yes, I would say that I'm the closest thing to an Elusive Samurai advocate.
I don't hate it. I just also don't particularly like it. Right.
Okay.
I would say I am enjoying it despite the story, if that makes it.
Is it still just because it's like a really nice visual spectacle thing, or is it?
It definitely helps. I mean, like as you'd expect, like as we've gotten into the meat and potatoes of the show, they've dialed the visual spectacle way back because
Right.
production
Couldn't keep that up.
But I think like even if the animation is still not the flashiest, they still choose like really interesting visual choices. You know, there's a lot of clever framing and like, you know, some good super deformed stuff, some good unusual angles and stuff. It's still a pleasure to look at. And I think the visual storytelling pulls a lot of weight because the writing is pretty
perfunctory.
Yes, yeah, that is exactly the right word. In fact, it's not terrible. You've just seen it a million times. You know we're still in
the team one by one.
Yeah, we're still in the stage where we're assembling our team of like weird rogue teens and preteens. One of them's a goofy thief who's kind of a bad guy, but he's coming along for the love of the hunt. One of them's like a weird samurai who eats a lot because that's funny, and you know it's not bad. It's just very very meat and potatoes.
Yeah,
you know it's the two things. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I mean, we don't have to relitigate the Shonen Jump formula again, but yes, it's very like by the book, right?
I would say that the two things which stand out are the visual style and kind of related to the visual style, the bad guys, because the bad guys are all like weird freaks. Like first we had a guy who has like he's a super good archer. He has like crazy supervision, and the way they communicate this is by giving him like enormous bulging eyes, which they fill the screen with at every single point.
Right, like it's a Ren and Stimpy bit.
Right. Yeah, it really is that exaggerated. And then we got like the dude who can hear everything, and so like we get a whole bunch of weird shots of his ears and stuff like that. And you know that's a good example of like the visual storytelling meshing well with the narrative to just make something way funnier and goofier than it otherwise would be. So like, and I enjoy how completely crazy and over the top they've been so far. Like the villains are way more interesting than our like super white bread heroes and stuff, you know. So I'm still enjoying it, but you know, in a very limited way.
Right. Yeah, I mean, sometimes watching one of those kind of shows every now and then is you just need that every now and then. But yeah.
I mean, also, you know, I have not watched many of the Shonen Jump shows over the years, so I'm not quite as ground down by the formula as other people are.
I will say that, like, the side characters here, the other part members of the crew, other than the main guy, are like even less important than in most of this type of.
Oh man,
that's like, saying a lot. Yeah,
two of them just show up. Like two of the main party members just like our adult figure goes, "Hey, these are your party members," and then they're there, and like that is all the depth they have. They don't even get like a cliched origin story or anything, and it's super weird, and I can't get over it. And you just can't become attached to them because of that.
Yeah.
I
wonder if that's like because it is like historical based, right? Really, just like, oh, we got to get this guy in there. I don't know.
Historical based, I think, is extremely liberal.
By that I mean like the names of the characters and stuff that they have to like throw in there.
Maybe I don't know enough about the history of the period, but I think these are mostly just shonen-y anime stereotypes. I will say as well, great opening, fantastic ending, real bangers, both of them.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get on to our regularly scheduled anime talk.
Mm-hmm.
Starting off with Nier Automata version 1.1a second season. How
Yep.
deep are we into 9S's descent into madness
Well,
at this point?
we're getting there, but we're not that deep because they took a break one of the last 2 weeks.
Right.
Oh, so there's only been one
There's a
episode.
recap episode, yeah.
Which, as some may recall, if you've been sticking with the anime for this long, the first season also had some production issues, though those were mostly COVID related. So it's like, you know, well, the same story continues, I suppose, but hopefully they can, get across the finish line here. But yeah, the one episode we do get, it kind of is continuing the thing that we say every week of like it is following the broad strokes of the story, but it is finding kind of new and interesting ways to kind of flesh out aspects of the story that an interactive medium could like maybe not do as well.
Right.
One of the major examples in the latest episode we watched is they have kind of shifted around 21O's place in the story. As a quick recap, 21O is 9S's operator unit, the very like
mission control
and very like strict big sister archetype, right? And in the game, you find 21O during the ascent of the tower, where she kind of serves as like no, she's somewhere else. She's in one of the three. Point is she is a boss fight, right? She is a boss fight to be defeated and to kind of just ratchet up the Yoko Taro misery porn, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here they have 9S run into 21O much earlier in the story than in the games. And rather than have 9S fight and kill 21O, 21O kills herself to save 9S. And we get some flashback to 21O, like prior to the events of Route C. And it's nothing major. It's not like, oh, wow, like it puts her in a whole new light. But it's more like these are the things you kind of always knew about this character. And so we can kind of just reinforce them with some extra scenes that the game like could not like, find a way to elegantly fit in. Yeah. And it works. It works well in a way that I think, like, I don't think it's like necessarily better than the game, but it works just as well in fleshing out that character and kind of furthering 9S's like miserable descent into like his violent nihilism. There's a part where like there's a very good part where like because this 21O section is happening like not during like a high pressure situation, 9S has an opportunity to try to mourn 21O, and you think he's like about to, and you might, there's a little bit of like maybe some of that tenderness of 9S will come back, but instead like 9S kind of angrily forgoes the opportunity to grieve for 21O. Like he kind of goes full into like, no, fuck this, like I don't have time to grieve. I'm here to kill machines. I'm here to kill A2.
He is willingly renouncing his humanity, right?
Yes, in the name of his revenge. And it works. And in contrast, A2 hangs out with a bunch of robots that shout pee and poop over and over again. And it's very funny.
Video games are art.
The contrast is pretty funny. It's intentional at this point. It has to be just like every time they go back to A2 hanging out the machine village, she's like just like entertaining the children robots, which for those who play the games is really gonna really ratcheting up your emotional investment in Pascal's village.
Oh wow! This place is great.
Like, there's just a lot of good bits of both Pascal and Lily, the leader of the rebellion, the resistance, just kind of fucking with A2, like just like because they know that deep down, like both Pascal and Lily know that deep down A2 is, she is who she's always been, right? Like she has been hardened and made cynical by her experiences, but she is still that original, combat unit she was in the flashback, right? Like she is fundamentally a decent person, and Pascal will be like, Oh yeah, that errand that Lily wanted you to. Look, it's gonna take like another 3 hours for me to take care of that. You have to take care of the children while I go take care of that errand. And by the way, I taught the children the concept of toilets. So, all right, have fun, I guess.
Have fun with that one.
Have fun with that.
Oh, that's very good.
And it works, yeah. But yeah, they're definitely building up. The episode kind of ends with 9S going to one of the 3 Zelda MacGuffin towers that you have to in the game to unlock the final level, and where he slaughters a bunch of innocent robots pleading for their lives.
Countdown to the Devil and Popola cameo.
Oh, they've been here.
They're around.
Oh, they did show up. Okay.
Yes, in fact, they've been quite prominent in the puppet shows at the end of the episodes lately.
Okay. I was thinking specifically as you were mentioning the Zelda MacGuffin towers, because
yes,
for people who played the game, yes, but
yeah, long story short, they're continuing to do good work with it.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it every episode. It's like the same consistent, making use of the medium
when it comes to anime adaptations of video games. It is one of the better ones,
for sure. Okay. Well, let's talk about Sengoku Youko.
Yeah. Sengoku Youko, huh?
How has that been going?
I
bounced last episode, so I'm no longer up on this. So.
Hey guys, remember when Sengoku Youko looked a little bit better than it did now? It still it somehow looks worse than it did, right? Because it's the second season, it's going to look worse. And it's just.
I mean,
really...
would you say it looks worse enough that it's becoming a problem?
It was always a problem.
We kind of talked about that last time, right? It does detract from the.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because you can tell that they are putting in as much as they can with what they have. Like, this is a big narrative climax. The Shogun's castle is being attacked as it happened in history. Senya is fighting the dragon, having, trying to come to terms with his own power and abilities, and everything's reaching a height, and they are putting in as much as they can with the anime, right? It looks better than last week, right? But they have no money. Everything's really close in, so they don't have to animate as much. They cut away from major impact frames that just are doing their damnedest to sell it with the music and the framing and everything, and it just is not. It's just not enough, right?
It's not. I mean, here's the thing. To be clear, right? Sengoku Youko, this is not a Golden Kamui-esque disaster. This is not even a Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer-esque disaster, right? It is a competent adaptation, but it is one that cannot. It cannot hit the notes that it needs to when it truly matters. I think
I'm going to stop you right there, G, because I feel like you said that exact same thing on the last episode of the podcast.
I probably did,
literally down to the words. Right?
I think it's unfortunately there isn't much more to say about Sengoku Youko.
Yeah.
I mean, these last 2 episodes that we watched are meant to be kind of the climax of the second
part 2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah, right? So, Senya, who is, the kid who has, 1,000... Is it 1,000 or 100?
1,000.
1,000 demons residing in him. And has kind of, this arc has been about his, fear of his own power, the fear of what he could inflict on other people with this power. And, it's the classic shonen thing of he comes into his own and accepts the power as a part of who he is. It's a self-actualization moment. It's these are important and in the manga well executed character beats, and the anime simply cannot capture them, the way that we would like it to. I mean, Iro talks about them missing impact frames. I mean, it's as bad as the last attack that Senya does on the dragon rival Vegeta kid he's fighting is like this super powered demon powered punch that's like imbued with the power of all the demons.
Right,
He's
it's the thing he uses at the very beginning of this part, and it's like, yeah, you're a cool strong tech, and then it like blows up the village, right? And he's like, I'm never using this again,
right?
I'm never doing this again. And so him doing it now is, supposed to be a moment,
he's accepting that part of himself again. Except what happens is he winds up for the attack, and then it instantly cuts to the rival character falling over from the attack, going, "Oh, it was so strong!" And it's like, wait, I think you missed something. It would be
like I said, all the old specials coming out to play here.
But they don't even imply it well. Like, it would be like if you saw Goku charging up a Kamehameha, like fire it, and then it cuts to Vegeta lying in a smoking crater. Like,
please,
but not as a joke, right?
Sorry, Ira, what?
Yeah, but like not as a joke, like in a
no, not as a joke. Yeah, it's like there's no impact, right? There's no because here's the thing. This is a somewhat common trick in anime, right? To like kind of like mask that you maybe don't have the budget to show like the full impact of an attack.
Show like the glow, right?
You show the anticipation and the reaction, but the problem is that it doesn't even have like the slightest bit of implication of impact. It is just anticipation and then reaction with nothing in between.
There's not even a skeleton of the action. There's just nothing at all, right?
Right. Yeah, it's very strange, and it's
the question I have. Like, I mean, I watched the show up to the first episode of season 2, so I've seen a good chunk of it, right? Or most of it that's aired so far. Yeah. Is the problem... I mean, obviously the production stuff doesn't help, but like, is it still really just the condensing the storytelling? Like, so like you mentioned...
That doesn't help either, right?
You mentioned with, what's the kid's name again?
Senya.
Like, that thing with him destroying the village, that was only 4 episodes ago, right?
Right.
So like...
That's a problem
to go from that...
Not a great amount of time to grow...
to his big, epiphany in 4 or 5 episodes or whatever it is. I think it was 4, but like that's a lot to ask in a short period of time.
Right. When instead it's happening over, I don't know, like however many chapters, like I don't know, let's say I don't have the count immediately, but like if it's happening over like 20 to 25 chapters of manga, that just implies a larger amount of time because it's taking breaks more often, right? Compared to like 4 episodes where it feels like 4 weeks have passed and most, right? Which is like always the thing about watching stuff in real time, or even not in real time, but just the way things are broken up in pacing, like can do a lot to affect that stuff, I think, which is why a lot of compilation movies aren't as good and stuff, because that just mental break of time is passing because we broke episodes here, or we broke chapters here, like helps create the story. And losing that means the montage of him doing whatever is like basically the same, but because less time is passing in like quote unquote real life.
Okay,
so
they're not.
Hit.
So I guess you would know better than any of us, but they're not like actually cutting things from the manga per se in this section, or are they?
They have previously, right? I would have to go back. Like,
I mean, in this specific section though, like in season 2 so far, like this whole.
Iroh's memory of Sengoku Youko is definitely the best of anybody's talking here, but I will say, having talked to other people who have read the manga more recently, my understanding is that they have cutscenes, like maybe nothing too major, but they are most certainly truncating things to get to where they are much quicker than the manga does.
Right.
Yeah.
Because to me, that always felt like the biggest problem to me is I was not given enough time to care, and by the time we got to season 2, it was like I just don't I got other things I want to do with my life at this point.
There's definitely, yeah. I think even like cutting like one page here and there is still like causing problems. There's like a really good moment where, because Senya's about to fight this dragon, right? And all of the demons inside of him are terrified of the dragon because Senya's father was a big dragon to keep them all in check, right? And so they're like, we can't fight a dragon. There's no way that's happening. And so like the thing is, at the last moment, the weakest of all the demons walks forward in his mind palace and is like, I want to punch the dragon. I'm going to do it, right? And this like, but they skip all the lines, like establishing who this demon is.
Yeah,
right.
It's
just a
much.
demon. so it's like it doesn't work because you don't know that, like, of all of the demons full of bluster in Senya, the shittiest one has finally like agreed with Senya and wants to fight the dragon. Like, you lose that emotional moment, and so it's just, oh, random demon wants to punch the dragon. Well, we're fighting this dragon anyway. Why does it matter?
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, just it's not fair.
I find that interesting. It's like, even something that seems like such a small cut can make such a big difference, right?
Right.
As far as
because like that's, I guess, like that's always the thing with Mizukami is he is doing a lot of the same things in the broad strokes as a lot of these like shonen type shows and all that, but then in the small details is where, you know, things are different enough to really shine, I think.
I mean, would you say part of the frustration is that they're like, I don't know, 70% of the way there or something, and like they can't quite land it? Or do you think it's kind of a deeper issue than that?
I mean, that's the problem, right? Like, is that they're trying so hard. They're like, again, this is like we said, this is not a Biz Camera situation where it's just like so bad that it is self-evident that this isn't going anywhere, right? It's like they have almost done, you know, season 1 was fine for Sengoku Youko. Like, they have shown intent, they show that they care, and it's just not enough. And
right,
that's
like
very frustrating.
Like there's an obvious good faith intention here in this adaptation,
right?
Right?
Yes. It's not like they're not trying. It's just, it's not good enough.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of, and in some ways that can be even more frustrating, right? Like, you know, for better or worse, right? Like, the Lucifer and Biscuit Hammer anime came out. Most of us, not Eero, watched like 2 episodes and went, all right, hey,
happening.
good.
Yeah. We had a good
That's
one.
it.
Yep.
2 episodes is pretty generous, honestly.
Yeah, I was like, what?
Yeah. Yep. Just,
but this is like, oh, y'all like you're going to the paint, like you're going to the mat for this. Like, you are, like White Fox, like, legitimately is, right? I mean, we repeat the story every week, right? That White Fox's CEO like personally like greenlit the episode extension, right? This was originally going to be a 2-course show, and the CEO of White Fox was such a big fan of Mizukami and Sengoku Youko, he was like, I will like personally green light the 3rd core.
Yeah.
Like how many adaptations can even like hope to get treated that well, quote unquote, you know? It's just that even something that extraordinary is still not enough to, I think, to just overcome the gulf of like the material, manpower, and time needed like to make an adaptation like this sing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Alas. All right. Well, so is it going to be like a whole new
manga?
So go ahead, Iro.
Yeah, just read the manga instead.
Okay. I was just going to say, is it going to be is going to go into like a whole new arc now or something with the
Yeah, probably in the next like 2 episodes ish.
Okay.
They will probably be into the next arc of the story.
Okay. Well, the saga continues on that, I guess. Let's move on to talk about Senpai is an Otokonoko. I had some criticisms last episode about this show diving more into the melodramatic high school romance love triangle nonsense, which is criticism I think is still valid. I do think the two episodes I talked about last times kind of suffered for them being specifically focused on that, whereas I actually do really like the latest two episodes that we're talking about now.
So
Okay.
you think they've course corrected a little?
Yeah, I think that just those two episodes happen to lean more on that. I mean, it's still there, so like the broad criticism I would still have is that we've moved away from like the three main characters hanging out together, and now it's the love triangle thing where you take turns. So
Right.
so
Yeah.
like this episode, the main kid is hanging out with the girl, and this episode, the main, and my favorite part was having like the three of them be together, and that seems to be mostly gone. They did give a little bit of like to kind of lighten things up a little because it was getting heavy for a bit. They gave us a break with some, the school festival hijinks, haunted house, maid cafe nonsense, whatever, which was fun.
You know the drill.
But the latest episode was actually really good. And it turns the focus over to the childhood friend guy, and he basically, long story short, his crush on the main kid gets out in the open, and he's backed into the corner, and he just straight up confesses to him.
Okay.
And
how is that possible? It's not the final episode yet.
And we get some pretty extensive and I think needed flashback as to how we got here, which I thought was really good. Because like so when I say this guy was like his childhood friend, it was like one of those, they were close when they were like really little kids, and then they moved or whatever, and then
we're going to the same high school. It's been
and then they get
6 to 9 years,
right, and then so they see each other again in high school. So it's not like they've been together for the entire time. And so when this, and it was good. I think it's good that they acknowledge they're not being naive about like this kid being in this perfect world where he can experiment with his gender and not have any problems or anything, right? Because when we see them at the beginning of the series, everybody at school's pretty cool with him wearing a girl's uniform and wearing the long hair and everything, and everyone's pretty chill about it. But we flash back to when he first started doing it, and that was not the case. Everyone was probably reacting. I don't know what the kids are doing these days, so that maybe they wouldn't react this way exactly. But there's a lot more like, ew, weird. This guy's gross. That kind of stuff.
My understanding is they're mostly making TikToks.
Yeah. So this guy who was his friend when he was a kid and hasn't seen him in however many years is also kind of thinking the same thing as everybody else. But what I appreciated is he actually does like stop and think about it, and they actually show him doing like research and stuff. Like they actually show him like looking on his phone, reading stories about like, there's like a shot where there's like news stories with headlines, and it's like, challenges of being a trans person, and problems that same-sex couples face and stuff. Like he's reading about, he starts reading about this, and as he educates himself and starts to understand more why he's like that, then he decides to basically stick up for him.
So Joe, can I ask for clarification on something? Because so this might be a thorny question, but our main character does not. Do they explicitly identify as trans, or are they just kind of experimenting?
They explicitly do not know.
Right. Okay.
So I mean, and when I say explicitly, and this actually comes up again in this block of episodes, and he does use he/him pronouns, which is why I'm still using him.
Right. I was going to say that was.
So and most of the time he refers to himself as a boy, but he's still trying to. But he's at school he's presenting as a girl, and
Right.
also he's clearly trying to figure things out. Like, so like in this,
So the uncertainty is part of the story, is what you're saying there.
yeah. So like in this episode, it kind of comes up again. And his mom is like very much against any of this, but his dad is very cool about it, and his dad is like kind of asks him again because it's been some time of, you know, he just says, do you want to be a girl, and if so,
Right.
I will help you make that happen.
Yeah.
And the main kid is still like, I don't know, I'm still thinking about it. So yes, it is. He doesn't know yet. Broadly speaking, he's still referring to himself as a boy, but he doesn't really know.
Sure.
So,
okay. Yeah. I mean that is a pleasantly nuanced take on the situation, I would say.
I think in general, and I'm glad we're seeing more of these kinds of stories pop up in, you know, in general, but in anime specifically, where they're being very open about, like, there's no like implications or anything. Like, you know, like I said, the kid was literally like reading stories about, you know, trans people and same-sex couples and stuff like that, right? So
you don't have to hide it behind the veil of innuendo anymore.
Yeah, and I think it's nice because you can have a show like this where it doesn't have to be the one, you know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't have to be the one show about this that has to cover all of your, you know, thoroughly investigate, you know.
It does not have to be the message.
That has always been the issue with any piece of media about a marginalized,
so it's certainly part of the story, but it's also still kind of baked into this kind of more lighthearted type of, you know, comedy type show. And I'm glad we're getting, I mean, obviously there's a lot of progress still needs to be made, but like, I'm glad we're getting, you know, we're making any progress at all, right? So I really appreciated, like, they kind of had that point of view leading up to the present day. So like, this kid decides, all right, well, you know, it's not fair how everybody's treating him. I'm gonna stick up for him, and that's how they kind of rekindle their friendship and become close again, right? And so as time passes,
like that's a way more believable as a kind of like a reconnection point rather than a we are suddenly the bestest friends ever thing. You know?
Yeah, and you know, as this guy overcomes his, you know, latent casual homophobia and whatnot, he realizes he's probably gay. So this all culminates into him literally confessing and saying, I love you. And they technically start dating. Which I don't know if that's gonna stick, because you know how that can go in these kind of love triangle type situations.
How will the love triangle survive this?
Yeah, whether you know, take the gender stuff out and just make it any love triangle in anime, and you know it's never that simple, right? Especially when you've got,
of course not. Where's the drama?
Especially when you got like 5 episodes left, right? So I don't know if it's gonna stick, but it does end with them kind of walking and holding hands at the end. So good for them, but we'll see where it goes. But yeah, I'm, you know, I think I came off maybe a little more negative than I wanted to last time. So I just wanted to make sure that I was, you know, clear that this show is still good.
I mean, you were disappointed. I think it was the thing there. Right?
I think those 2 episodes were just in a bubble, not that great themselves. But you know, in the overall picture, you know, I still think this is a really good show. So, and they've already gone way further than I expected, especially at this point in the series. So, I'm interested to see how they proceed without hopefully messing things up. But we'll
always an imminent danger, right?
Yeah, because this episode, because the latest episode ends. So the last thing we see is, if you recall, I mentioned for the girl that was in love with him, she made this like big promise to her grandma that she would find her special someone, and now she has told her grandma that she has found her special someone because she's in love with the main kid, and she was starting to feel guilty because she was like, maybe he isn't my special someone, and of course, this episode ends with a dramatic phone call that your grandmother's in the hospital, and
So you better date him out of social obligation.
Yeah, I will almost put money.
Opera.
I hope this doesn't happen, but I will almost put money down. So I'll put it on tape here that she's going to ask him to pretend to be her boyfriend and visit her grandma at the hospital.
The old reliable.
If you're really dating, then kiss right now.
Well,
in front of my deathbed.
I don't know if they'll quite go that. I don't know if they'll quite go that far. But
that's fucked up, man.
Jesus Christ! Like, I was gonna say, as nuanced as the show can be in handling the topics that need nuance, everything else is not subtle or like that complicated. So like I would totally expect them to do this. Okay, can you pretend to be my boyfriend to go visit grandma? And
I'm gonna write that one in the book if I ever become a grandparent. Get it with the old, oh yeah, prove it.
Hey, look. As a single person in my 40s, having family members get on your case about not being married is a real thing. But I don't think when you're 16, it's that as big a deal. Nevertheless, I don't know how we got to that point, but
yeah, you got 9 whole years before you're over the hill when you're 16.
Anyway, it's a good show. Still a good show.
I'm glad it's picked up again.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Mayonaka Punch.
I think this show is getting worse as it goes on. I mean, it's maybe unfair to compare it to other PA Works Working Girls show, Akiba Maid War. But
I don't think that's a fair comp.
Yeah,
but
maybe it's because that show was parodying like Showa drama tropes, Yakuza movies and such, and this is just parodying YouTube influencers.
I mean, is it even a parody?
I would go as far as say I don't even think it's parody. Like, I think that's the thing. Like,
but it's part of the joke. Let's say right. And it's just that is something I'm not as interested in or as knowledgeable about, and so I do not find it as entertaining. Right.
I agree with you, and I think yes, that is definitely part of the issue here.
Yeah. And every episode has been hewing very closely to the format of something is happening to strain the relationship between Masaki and the vampires, and perhaps even among the vampires themselves. But by the end of the episode, we'll all reaffirm our bonds and go back to making videos, right? And man, I'm getting real tired of it.
I think I'm broadly more positive on it, but I will definitely say I do agree that it does feel like, despite some status quo shifts in these last couple of episodes, it does feel like a show that is kind of treading water.
Yeah.
It feels like a lot of anime comedies in that I feel like it just doesn't quite have the snap to it. It doesn't quite have the bite, the last 10% that would make it really funny. It just sort of is content with being kind of amusing instead.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. We could probably debate to what degree some of those things are, but I think that's all, accurate description of what's going on here. I think for me, like, and again, I'm still broadly very positive on it. Like, even if it is a bit repetitive, I think the vibes of the show are still very fun, and it's entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, at least for me, this show still makes me laugh. Like, yeah, to be clear, like I'm still having a pretty good time with it.
There are definitely still some good gags. Yes.
Yeah. I think because this is the week we got like the bells scene.
Yeah, I see exactly right. Yeah, the Ichiko episode.
So like in the first
was
episode,
really good, admittedly.
once again they get in trouble and it escalates to Mother, and their ownership of the mansion is in jeopardy.
They're gonna demolish the rec center.
Their amazing plan is to do this performance to show that how coordinated and how they are and how in sync they are, and just which doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Right. I mean, to summarize briefly, right, yeah. So we were introduced to the new kind of like overarching plot point, which is that the vampires have behaved too badly and they're going to lose the house, and they're going to get split up and sent off to other vampire houses.
The vampire juvenile hall.
Yeah, and Ichiko does not want this. We kind of get more insight into her character. Basically, she is, to her, like, this shitty household of shitty vampires is her found family, right? This idea that like that is the reason for her emotional investment in the well-being. Like, she is the one who introduced the concept of like eating meals together, and I think broadly it all works. It probably doesn't hit as much as like the Fu episode, but also I don't think every character needs their like insanely emotional backstory.
I mean, the Fu episode also works a bit better because she is kind of a more serious character as opposed to the rest of them, who are just like at maximum comedy dirtbag all the time.
Right, yeah. But yeah, yes, it all culminating in we'll win over Mother by showing our coordination, and they do this like I don't even like know what the I don't even know what like genre of performance this is. Like they come out with a set of like 12 sets of bells, and like they play them in concert with each other, right? They're like handing bells to each other and playing
Old Lang Syne.
Yeah, playing Old Lang Syne.
I don't know if it's a thing in Japanese that like Japanese kids do in school, but it starts with a Japanese like elementary schooler saying I have to do this for school, showing it to her
on so I think that's the implication, right? Is that this is some elementary school like concert performance talent show shit, right? And they think just they think it's going to be like this powerful moving performance or something. And when they do it, the other characters like Masaki and the other vampire girl that's not in their group, and they're just it's just like total deadpan, like what the hell am I watching? I mean, I think the thing that really works for me is that it is like kind of a shitty performance. Like it's an impressive bit of coordination for people who had like a week to put this together, I guess, but
right. And for a group of people that have, one brain cell between them, but
it's an incredibly basic bit of music making. It is like baby first, like
and just the like I'm not going to put it on the tier of the the Bimbo Gamiga cooking scene deadpan, but it's the one with the where
they're dying off screen, right?
Yeah, where they're dying. Well, technically off screen, and they're just staring at them. But yes, maybe I'll link that in the show notes because that's one of my favorite clips of all time. But it's a similar type of joke, though, right? Where they're just like,
And it all kind of culminates in somehow their weirdly emotional pleas work, and they're now given 6 months to get 1 million YouTube subscribers, or else they'll demolish the mansion, which is a very goofy way to up the ante here, but sure, why not? I guess this is now we have a time limit, I guess.
Right. And that kind of gets into the next episode where I guess they find out that their problem is Masaki is a bad editor.
Masaki doesn't realize the value of authenticity in your internet content.
Too deep in the algorithm.
Like, I had to assume her prior channel was, like, decently popular, but, like, this episode really, like, gave me some, like I get why, because, again, it's, like, they kind of had to do these kind of plot lines that, like, will work for an audience that is not versed in this, like, profession.
Right.
But it feels very weird that Masaki would fall for like one of the most elementary mistakes in YouTubing. right? Like the whole thing is like, oh, in her like frenzied like desire to hit 1 million subs, which, you know, on an emotional level speaks to Masaki's desire to like keep this weird group of friends she's found together at all costs. She is like decided to play to the algorithm, right? We're going to upload 3 videos a day. You know, we're going to jump on the most, you know, popular topics, right? We're going to chase the algorithm, right? And you know, it totally does the thing of like, and the very important lesson we learned today is that it's like,
I think the idea is that like she's become so lost in the process that she's forgotten the simple joy of making videos, which, you know, is a time-honored plotline.
I will say that, like, as, again, like, YouTubing is very different from art, but, like, I will say for my part, right, I get the, like, emotional thrust of this episode, right? Like, this idea that, oh, like, what will you pursue in the name of success, right? And, like, yeah, like, the ways in which living your life like that, or using your creative skills like that, can make you miserable really, really quickly, right? And, you know, arguably you will make worse work that will probably not even do what you want it to do, which is like make you famous or popular or whatever it actually is that you want out of like why you create.
Right.
But yeah, I just think, I don't know, like
it gets maybe when we've had this come up before, maybe a little more saccharine than I would like in the show as far as like as far as like the message. But I will say they do kind of still stick to their guns at the end, because it's basically her conclusion is, all right, everybody get naked. I mean, that's her solution at the end. So
I mean, cynically,
that'll bring in the views, and that's what ends up working, right?
Like, so I think like 1 million subscribers in 6 months is unrealistic, I think, for even the most popular like up and coming streamers. But like if you truly like all you cared about was cynically hitting 1 million as fast as possible, I mean, you know, you got some attractive chicks as your streamers, just, I don't know, get into the bathtub meta, right?
That's basically, you know, because so I don't think they were entirely abandoning the whole, you know, the you know, the real path to, you know, the thing that people really are watching is the power of friendship or whatever, but I did like that they at least included that at the end, where at the end of the day, just getting them naked was going to be the most effective way to get subscribers.
It's almost always fun when you can end on a joke.
So
I would never subscribe to a channel that uploaded 3 videos a day.
Dude, like what I mean, this is like obviously like a very different type of YouTubing that I think any of us in our age group are familiar with.
And they did get into like how Masaki was like cutting out all their conversations and stuff. It was just like literally, we're gonna, you know, eat this food today, and it's, you know, she edited it down to them being like, okay, this is the food, I'm eating it, and at the end, right? So that was like the whole, you know, point was that, you know, people want to see, they want to feel like you're hanging out with them, right? Like that's the whole point.
They want to see the hijinks. They want to see you fall off a chair or a wall.
To build a parasocial relationship,
you know.
Yeah. So
they want to see you break your hand live on stream while playing VR.
Yeah. I think so, you know, I think the show still, I'm still very entertained by it, and I'm enjoying it. My criticism is, and I don't even know if this is a criticism or more, I guess, my own personal wish for the show. When we got that episode with Fu and her backstory and that kind of taking us into a different place, I was kind of hoping we would get more episodes like that. Not so much like the emotional pulling on your heartstrings type of specifically, but just introducing different settings and, you know, maybe even genre types and things, as opposed to you know, just kind of sticking to strictly making YouTube videos.
You're headcanoning out your 1920s noir
vampire. So something like that.
I wanted it to be a little more like Occupy Maid War.
Well, I don't think this is the show that has the formula for that.
Not even necessarily that. I think more what I was getting at is like just because
do a little more with like the characters, right?
Because here's the thing, all right, like if YouTubing is going to be your core premise of like, oh, we're making YouTube videos, I think even within that realm, like the episode where they go to the deserted island is actually, I mean, again, conclusion a little too saccharine, but the premise of,
Right.
oh, we're sending the girls to a desert island for YouTube, for the views,
Is
that
doing
I think is
something.
actually, yeah, and I think you could actually use that premise to get away with a lot of things. Like, oh, the girls are going to enter a wacky go-kart race, or the
Right.
girls are, you know, whatever, right? Like,
I
you
mean,
could
like,
use...
Play a baseball
you
game.
see whatever fucking dumbass
Yeah.
thumbnails are on YouTube where it's like,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
paid a hitman to chase me, or whatever, right? Like,
Your scope
whatever.
is basically
Real one, right?
unlimited.
whatever the fuck, you know.
Yeah.
Right, your scope is unlimited, and you have a format that actively encourages wacky hijinks. So,
Right.
Yeah. So that's probably my main thing is like they've shown kind of flashes of being able to do that, and most of the time they're not. But
Yeah.
even as is though, I think it's a fun show. I'm still having fun. So
Yeah.
all right, let's talk about Ramen Akaneko. I have almost nothing to say about this show at this point.
How's the ramen?
have we fallen further into the furry confusion zone where we're not sure who is a cat, who is human?
Oh,
and
yeah,
where the
there's
dividing line is.
There's definitely been more of that. Like there's so one of the episodes, one of the scenes, this guy who owns like a big like franchise restaurant chain comes in because he heard about this ramen shop run by cats, and so he makes a business proposal to basically franchise Ramen Akaneko, and that's going to be the next big thing or whatever, which they decline for a number of reasons. But one of them,
Where are they going to find the cats?
Yes, one of them is they explain that while apparently it's not a secret that talking cats exist, they're pretty rare. Like most cats are just normal ass cats.
Not the basis of a solid employment, solid workforce. Then.
And they said that most cats, even if they can talk, are too lazy and stubborn to work anyway.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that was interesting, continuing to have hints of world building in there. But yeah, that was probably the most exciting thing that happened out of these two episodes. Everything else is kind of been continuing to just be like random customers that are just normal people coming in, and it's just nice and pleasant, which is fine. I mean, I'm enjoying it. In fact, I found it very amusing. ANN put out like the like anime rankings for 1 week in Japan, and this was like the highest rated, like it was like the only like late night anime in the top 10 or whatever. Everything else was like the daytime kid shows. Like okay, I don't know how much TV ratings in Japan mean for popularity these days at all, but I found that very amusing. So but yeah, it's and they also announced a game, like a mobile game, where you're like making ramen or whatever.
You're gonna roll for your 5-star tiger or whatever.
Yeah, I got to get my 5-star Kenjiro Suda, right?
Yes.
But so I get, it seems to be maybe at least in Japan perhaps more popular than I'm giving it credit for, and it's a fun, pleasant show. So I get it. It's but doesn't make for great podcast content as far as things to talk about. I mean, it's somebody comes in and they ask for ramen and get ramen, and everybody's nice, and that's kind of it. But trust me, it's better when you're actually watching it. So, all right,
is it time?
It's time. Let's talk about Dead Demons DeDeDeDe Destruction. As I mentioned at the outset of the show, I powered through marathoning this up until maybe 10 minutes before the podcast. Honestly, I'm still processing things, so I'm still going to turn the bulk of the conversation over to you guys.
Tell us, Joe, though, how do you feel about one of Inio Asano's more light-hearted works?
I hate everyone, and humanity is doomed.
Yep.
And everything that's happening in the show is true.
Well, if there's one thing that years of watching anime have taught me, it's that when people start building an arc for the preservation of the human species, everything always goes super smoothly and well, and it always comes off exactly as planned. So at least there's that.
Yeah. And I'm sure the ending the latest episode with 5 days until the end of humanity is not going to result in anything bad happening.
Was it that little?
Yes.
I thought it was like 1 month until the end of humanity.
The latest episode 13 was 5 days. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, did that come out like today?
A few days ago.
Maybe
a few days ago. This week. Yeah.
I'm one behind then.
But yeah, we want to get into these episodes. Episode 12 kind of is, I think, a lot about people trying to, in some ways, I guess the overarching theme of it is probably people trying to find relationships in the wake, or trying to create connection in the wake of the end of the world, right? Like, you have Karode visiting her high school teacher, still determined to try to date him.
Look, man, like, a lot of people die in these episodes, but the worst thing that happens is still that dude trying to date one of his students. Like, come on.
Yeah, the thinnest, barest bit of credit I will give to this shitty teacher is him kind of acknowledging, like, look, I cannot and will not give you, or, well, they still sleep together, but I cannot give you emotional...
I think that was a joke, actually. I don't think they actually slept together.
Unclear.
I think it is unclear. But point is, I cannot give you emotionally. I cannot give you the connection you want, right? Like, Karode is, I mean... I think with these episodes, right, like, while people are still living their lives, right, the girls, I mean, literally go on a vacation, it becomes increasingly apparent that society as a whole is finally starting to recognize the material realities of what is happening around them. They may not acknowledge that the world is ending, but they are aware that things are probably changing forever.
They're circling the drain, and people are gradually beginning to realize that, I think. There's just kind of like a really effective atmosphere of doom across these episodes, you know, like, without ever, you know, making it too explicit. There's just kind of like a very heavy sort of foreboding that sort of permeates the storytelling here, and that's a really effective bit of mood setting.
Yeah, it's certainly, and what I think I appreciate most about this show is it is kind of exploring, you know, what would people really be doing in that type of atmosphere, and a lot of it is like, well, what can you do? You have to. There's certain things you have to keep living your life, and then, you know, maybe. You know, in this case, it's you try to resolve things that are important to you, like relationships, and it's pretty heavy stuff.
I think the other thing I wanted to mention, and I said this to Aqua in the wake of us watching episode 12, but I would not call Asano's dialogue realistic in any sense. His characters do not talk how real people talk,
right?
But the vibe is there, you know, more than most shows. Even if they are not saying the words as they would say in real life, you feel that sense of connection and sort of reality to the characters in a way that I can't quite explain.
I think what it is that the emotions,
what they do and how they feel seem realistic, even if the actual dialogue might not be. But
so to continue kind of the thematic through line of episode 12, right? Then on the other side of things, we see kind of Oba and Ontan or Oran kind of start to form their own kind of burgeoning relationship, right? Like there is a growing affection between the two, and you know, this all kind of culminates in like. And as a reminder, right, Oba is the kid, or is the alien who has taken over the body, right?
Right.
And earlier in the episode, he saves another alien from getting lynched by the YLF, the I mean, whatever the people who are lynching aliens,
the assholes.
Yes, and I mean, more importantly, right, is is that the veil kind of gets penetrated here, right? Because I think it is with this episode forward that it becomes knowledge that the aliens possess the capability of taking over human bodies, but anyways, yes, saves an alien from getting lynched, though that alien dies of his wounds later, but reveals to Oba, importantly, that the remaining aliens on the mothership essentially intend to overload their reactor to intentionally crash the mothership on Earth.
It's not that, it's that there's kind of a civil war happening.
Oh, I guess that's what it is. Yes, is that there's a conflict happening.
One faction wants to turn themselves over to humanity and basically throw themselves upon the mercy of the court, and the other faction wants to go down in a blaze of glory and destroy the planet.
Right, exactly.
Basically.
And it's a grim situation because, like, I mean, the aliens who have locked themselves up in the reactor, I can't exactly blame them.
Yeah.
If you look at how the aliens have been treated by humanity up till this point, right? It's like, but regardless, Oba feels like he now has a decision to make, right? Especially as he realizes that he also cares deeply about Oran. And like, the implication here is that, Oran doesn't want Oba to die, but maybe the only way to save Oran and the human race is to, like, go on what is all but guaranteed to be a suicide mission to stop the reactor overload, right, on the mothership.
Yeah, there seems to be a recurring theme here of how much do you sacrifice everything to save the person you love, or do you sacrifice the person you love to save everyone else, kind of thing. Right. I'm not going to call it. It's more complex than the trolley problem. I'm not going to call it that, but
no, but it does all kind of come to a head in the 13th episode where, oh man, I guess, man, if Zigga's not
go for it.
Okay, so the 13th episode finally reveals to us what is Oran's deal, basically. And
it kind of confirmed, at least for me, confirming
the theories that we had.
They have laid some pretty significant clues out.
They basically confirmed that the Oran that we see in the current day is actually an Oran from another timeline, the timeline of the flashback, where Karode went on her killing spree and then committed suicide.
Yeah,
and it is revealed that basically the aliens don't quite have time travel, but they can send a consciousness into a different timeline. And so
it's quantum leap, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, it's very limited. So, like in this specific situation, like she basically started over from the point where the alien had arrived.
Yeah,
at the other timeline.
I'm trying to think. So like there is definitely another piece of media which has used this concept of like.
Yeah.
Actually,
Uchikoshi games. Yeah.
Mental time travel, but
right.
But kind of, I guess tying to what I was saying, it was like because they flash back again to that time and what happened after Karode committed suicide, and like, Oran has a choice of, stay here in the timeline where the aliens do not come to Earth and humanity carries on as it would, or you go to the other timeline where the aliens do come to Earth.
Right, because the alien reveals to Oran, he breaks down to Oran specifically that he was basically, this alien that got sent here was basically the equivalent of like
advanced scout, right?
Yeah, he said that right. Can I guess?
Sure, go for it.
Because Karode did so many fucked up things with alien technology, he decides that in that timeline, the aliens should not come to Earth because humanity is dangerous. Yeah,
like he has basically said that in a roundabout way,
You
Oran
saved
and
humanity.
You saved humanity because your base morals disgusted me on such a primordial level that I have decided to report to my higher ups to never come here. So in a ways, good job. You saved the human race through your amorality. But in the world where you go back in time and never meet me, and I don't get firsthand exposure to the absolute worst excesses of mankind, we'll probably come here, and it will probably be mutual destruction for both of us. And are you willing to pull that trigger, basically?
I was just going to say, in episode 12, like, the reason they go on this beach trip is they go to meet these two women who apparently met an alien, and I was like, this isn't the same alien that we saw in the flashback, and Aqua was like, no, it isn't. But it is, just in a different timeline.
In a different timeline. And the thing I really like about this on multiple levels is that, like, you get the great parallel of, like, Karude's entire motivation for her killing spree was this twisted sense of, I am going to make a world that is worthy of Oran, right? That I will make, some real, like, megalomaniacal Death Note shit, right?
Yeah, basically. I mean, with a healthy dose of persecution complex,
right? That,
and also why you don't hand a super weapon to a child, but
yes,
no impulse control.
Yeah,
and you kind of have now the reverse here, where Oran will potentially give up. Will potentially, and to be clear, I will get into it later, but I do not think Oran should be blamed for the destruction of the human race. Yeah. But essentially, Oran becomes the catalyst for an even greater sacrifice of the human race than even Karude could have ever imagined to save Karude. And I think it's tragic, it's bitter, it's very Nier coded of, like, what these two girls, like, are willing to do for each other, right? How much they mean to each other, the amounts they are willing to sacrifice.
I mean, I think also, like, it's the culmination of a thematic progression we've seen through these episodes, which kind of has role reversed the two, which is, we began with Kadode as, like, the knowing, responsible one, and Oren as the space case who's way out to lunch. And gradually, as the situation has changed and, the bizarre has become reality, those roles have kind of reversed. Kadode is not irresponsible, but she's perhaps a little naive and a little lost. And Oren, increasingly, is like the madman who sees the path ahead. She's crazy enough to see where we're going.
And the thing I want to, like, make clear is that, like, yes, Oran's decision is what causes the aliens to visit Earth, but also Oran is not the one who ordered a genocidal response to the aliens. Oran is not lynching aliens in the street. Oran is not developing killer AI robots. Like, I think it's like Oran's decision may have been the catalyst for, like, the timeline we are watching in this show, but I think the reason why I am not, like, particularly bothered by Oran's decision is because the show makes it very clear that, like, the state of the current timeline is the failure or the moral abdication of multiple entities and institutions, many of which have far more power and far more, like, far-reaching, like, consequences than Oran's decision to save her best friend.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if it wasn't Oran, it could have been somebody else, right? Like, to set this off. But in this very specific, sci-fi time situation, yes.
Like, those two girls from episode 12 mentioned that they, like, trapped the invader for a few days, but then it got away. Who knows, if they had kept it trapped a little longer, perhaps we would have seen a repeat of what happened with Oran and Kadode. Yeah, I just think, I mean, I don't think the show has been particularly subtle about its critique of, let's say, multiple parts of the Japanese power structure. I think that what part of this twist says it's also kind of like a story about unforeseen consequences, right? Like, the change happened, but as you were saying, the change didn't have to be disastrous. Like, there is a timeline where humanity welcomes the aliens and benefits from their technology, and things go well. Right?
Sure, definitely.
Basically, Oran was, as a child would, betting on the inherent grace of humanity, and as a child would, was not aware that's a bet that's probably going to come up bad every single time.
Right. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at with like these latest episodes. I mean, I it's funny, Aaron and I had this discussion, and I don't know if that's just necessarily one to have for the podcast, because if we have this conversation, we will definitely go past the 2-hour mark. But like, I was thinking, like, why is it that like this story and Nier, which I think are both, and I know there are more stories than this, but I'm just using them because these are what I know and these are what I like, right? That
they're also both happening this season in anime, but yes.
Well, I actually mean the original Nier.
You're talking about the original Nier. Okay.
I think I know where you're going, G, and I'm going to have a response, but I'll let you finish.
So both of these stories are functionally about people who are willing to sacrifice the whole to save the individual, right? Like, spoilers for the PS3/360 video game Nier. That your actions in that game to save your loved ones essentially doom the human race. And here as well, Oran's actions, again, not solely to blame, but in the cosmic sense, one could argue her actions doomed the human race. And I think about, like, how come these works for me so much better than, for example, probably the most prominent example of this in Western fiction, something like The Last of Us, right? Where, Joel kills the Fireflies to save Ellie, potentially destroying any chance of the infection from being cured. Right?
To be fair, I think that's the one part of that game that does work, actually.
Okay. That's actually, I'm kind of glad to hear a dissenting viewpoint, because for me, those last few hours of The Last of Us really don't work for me. And the best I could come up with is it's like a tone thing, I guess. It's just like The Last of Us feels so mean-spirited and cynical about how the end of the world gets ushered in. And for some reason, like, Nier and Oran doing arguably the same thing, if at least thematically, I am like much more empathetic to their plights, I guess.
I think it's because, like, in The Last of Us, again, just to roll on the example, and we are not specifically bagging on The Last of Us here, but in The Last of Us, the destruction of humanity is an external force that cannot be stopped and could not be foreseen. In both Nier and Dead Demons, humanity destroyed itself. This is just the final, like, the little stone that started the avalanche, or in Nier's case, ends the avalanche.
Yeah, we're kind of like looking at humanity, right?
Yeah, the inherent moral of those stories is that humanity was consumed by its own greed, its own ability to cooperate, its own aggression. Like the catalyst.
I don't know if I'd say that about Nier.
I mean, like, I think a lot of the backstory of Nier, like the stuff that they get into in Grimoire Nier about Legion and all that stuff.
That stuff is not really. Never mind. I cannot litigate this. Right now.
I'm sorry. I knew. That's why I said if I brought this up.
Yes. No, I mean, like, just as like a quick. But even in the games, we see that, like, humanity has like, to survive, humanity has committed countless atrocious, like, horrifying acts of moral degradation. Like, they have killed millions and millions of people at this ridiculous long shot, like, bat brain scheme to try and survive. And I think the fundamental question there is this world even worth saving? And I don't think Dead Demons is quite as cynical as that, but again, just like you were saying earlier, it's not Oren's fault that the aliens are planning to destroy Earth. It's society's fault. It is the response from those in power. And I think that's a key difference. There is an element of hubris and nemesis in those stories, which I don't think is present in something like The Last of Us. That's just my take, obviously.
Yeah, I never played The Last of Us, so I can't really speak to that too much. But I do feel like with the other two, like it is to me a lot more about holding up the mirror to humanity and, what are we capable of, and, that kind of thing, more so than I don't know. I don't get the impression that The Last of Us really gets that much into it, and is more that always came off more as misery porn to me with with Last of Us, but maybe I'm wrong. I didn't actually play it. So I don't know. It's an interesting question though, for sure.
I mean, it's why, like, at the end of the day, I just concluded, it's probably just a vibes thing. Like, I'm not gonna like try to like. I probably can't like formulate the like equation that will explain why one of these works and one of these doesn't.
I mean,
and
it helps that we really like the characters of Dead Demons. Like, they are likable characters. They are
true. Yes,
they are charming. They have they have relatable problems and relatable hang-ups and obsessions and all this kind of thing. Like Oren's obsession with Western first-person is like one of the funniest ongoing bits,
right?
In a show for quite a long time. That's the thing. Even in his more nihilistic work, Asano has always been excellent at painting, and again, this kind of ties back to what I was saying earlier. Not necessarily realistic portraits of characters, but very empathetic portraits of characters. Characters you want to like, characters you believe deserve happiness.
Yeah, like as heavy as the show is, and as I actually don't feel like I would call it cynical. Like I feel like I said before, I feel like what they're saying is true, even if it's not always hard, or it doesn't feel like it's being, it's not misery porn to me. It doesn't feel like it's doing this just for the sake of making you feel bad, right? Like
I feel like I need to see like where the story goes at this point.
I think that is where
I make that call.
That is where I feel with Hero. Like, because for you to say that this show does not feel cynical to you is kind of crazy to me. I feel like this show is really cynical about power structures.
I think it's cynical about power structures. I think it is optimistic about the power of individual people. Like,
yeah, that probably wasn't exactly what I meant. But what I'm trying to get at is, like, I don't think they're just like doing things to make you feel bad for the sake of feeling bad. I think they're actually saying things that are accurate about humanity, which are not good, but
I feel like I need to see where the story goes and like how it decides to end before like.
Okay, so based on what we have seen so far, and I do know there's the episode 0, so we kind of have some general idea of where this is all going, but like based on what we have seen so far, it still doesn't feel like the whole purpose of this is just to make you feel bad. I feel like there is a message here, is what I'm trying to say.
I don't think the ending of this show is humanity is destroyed. I think there may be a large sacrifice, but I don't think humanity will be destroyed.
Oh, I do hope they don't do another time shift to save humanity at the end or something.
Well, we'll see. I have a really important point to make before we finish up.
Okay.
And that is, they really need to make that shirt of Darth Vader with tits on real, because I would buy it in a heartbeat. Like, I can't remember what it says on it, but it's just Darth Vader in a bikini with massive honkers, and I'm like, yes, I would absolutely buy that.
The kids in this show have some pretty good shirt game. I gotta say,
Reebok is credited in the credits, so just gotta say.
For sure, I would say the last thing I was going to say then is, would you all then say that what you really want here is you just want to see if those two crazy kids can make it in this messed up world?
Yeah, I mean, I have a limited amount of experience with Asano's work. I've only really read a Girl by the Shore and Goodnight Pumpan, but he doesn't like. I've read bits of Solanin as well, but in general, his endings tend to be bitter, but not like dark. I think that it would be out of character for him to end with total global apocalypse. I'm not necessarily ruling it out, but I think where they land this story, as with so many shows, will be a real test of it all the way through. What they're building towards.
I just feel like I'm personally reaching a point where it's like, yes, the show will show me every episode how the structures of society are failing at every point, and I just want to be like, yes, and I know.
I mean,
right?
Like I said, I think we are meant to contrast the corruptness of society with
I
think I get what friendship of the small.
Yes, no shit. I'm just like
true. I think what Iro is trying to say is that because they have hammered this point so much, like
I'm becoming like numb to it. Right? It's just like
either show me a smoking crater or show me the glimpses of hope sprouting from the ashes. Right? Like like it's the thing of like because I think a common comparison we have brought while watching this, right, is like Devilman Crybaby, and one thing Devilman Crybaby enjoyed because of its truncated runtime is like
it got in there like.
Yeah, like the misery porn was relentless, but also mercifully quick in a sense. Like,
I mean, I just don't think this show is misery porn, though. Like, I think a lot of it has been funny and goofy and
for sure,
uplifting, despite the I enjoy the slowness of the pace because I think it gives us more time to spend with the characters. I just can't accept I don't think this is a show that needs to shit or get off the pot, so to speak. I think
fair enough.
It's using its runtime effectively to endear.
I feel like I'm reaching the point where I want to say that to the show though, because especially as time is dilating further as we get to as now it's going 1 month to 5 days, and I'm just like, how long is it going to drag out those 5 days? How many episodes is the
5 minutes till Namek explodes?
When is the doomsday clock? How many more microseconds can we squeeze out of that shit? And
I will say,
okay, come on.
To your point, I wrote, what is there, 5 episodes left and there's 5 days? Are they going to do a day an episode or something?
I'm almost sure that's exactly what's going to happen,
right.
And I hope it doesn't.
I don't know.
So I feel up to now, I think it's been okay, but as we're getting toward the end,
it's like how many of these next episodes just gonna be like, and look at how happy Karada and Ontan are now that they've finally got their relationships figured out and they're having such a good time at the sea.
So what you're saying is you don't want the show to be miserable, but you don't want it to be happy either.
Correct. I don't want it to wallow in either.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think that's fair. I think that is fair.
I need to be assured that there will be a point at the end, and I can't make that call until it's at the end.
Right. We are in classic final runway anxiety that I think happens a lot of the times when we watch an anime we get emotionally invested in, which is this whole conversation might be moot, right? The show ends, it's great, and we all go, what were we even worried about, right?
Yeah, that would be great.
But we have done this rodeo so many times, right? We are staring the final stretch dead in the eye, and it's just get to the finish line.
I guess I just don't care. If it's good, I'll be thrilled. If it's bad, I'll be disappointed. But I'm not invested in it on that sort of level. I'm excited to see where they go. I think the risk that it could be a disaster is part of what's interesting about it. That to me is the exciting part.
I don't want things to be bad.
Of course not.
Yeah,
I think that is we can edit there. That is the motto of the GLORIO.
At the end of the day, we don't want things to be bad.
I shit on things as much as I do. I don't know. I hoot and holler about whatever. I don't want things to be bad. I just want and that's why when something is good so far, I want to hope that will continue to be good and in ways in which I appreciate. And I feel like Dead Demons is starting to toe up to that line for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm enjoying it. It's good. Great show.
Yeah, agreed.
That'll be the episode title. We don't want things to be bad. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Take us home,
Okay.
Gel. We can get this under 2 hours.
Yep, we're so close. Yep. So that'll do it for this week's episode, folks. To do our housekeeping, you can check us out at theglorioblog.com. Zig has already said he's working on the Kamen Rider Gotchard final
I'll
thoughts.
try and
keep
have
an
that
eye
out in the next week or so.
You can also check us out on co-host at GLORIO. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Stitcher, and of course YouTube, where you can like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell, tell your friends, tell your enemies, and we'll catch everybody next time.